Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, I received an email from a farmer down in Texas that's pretty much telling me the same thing that we've been talking about here for a while. Now, I went over this email, this message that I received during our last live stream, but as things have it, it always happens, the internet service that day was terrible. So I thought that I would recreate that portion of the live stream and go over this email with you and show you from the perspective of someone who's actually doing it what life is like and what it's like farming these days, as far as the cost, as far as the weather, as far as their profit margin and all that kind of stuff. To make a long story short, you better be preparing, because when someone that farms tells you you better be prepping, man, you better listen, ladies and gentlemen. Right? And this email that I received was probably about a week ago or so. And I'm going to go ahead and read it. I've highlighted several areas that are like points that I want to point out because it illustrates everything that we've been talking about for a while. So if you don't want to hear it from the mainstream media, if you don't want to hear it from a YouTuber, then listen to someone who's actually doing it. So, of course, I'm not going to go ahead and say the name of the person or where they live exactly, but I'm going to read this email to you. And as you can see, I've highlighted some key points here that I want to make throughout the reading of this email. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so you can listen to it from a farmer's perspective and not from the news, not from a YouTuber. This is someone who's actually doing it, living it in the now. Not 50 years ago, but right now, ladies and gentlemen. She goes on to say, I farm in Texas, and I can tell you that it is really bad. We are 40 days out to planting. There's been no rain for months, and we are running pumps to water the farms to get it ready. And ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about the drought issue that we're having. It is a real issue. It's not a made-up thing. It is a drought that is the worst since 1,200 years back. She goes on to say that they use circle water systems that are a 1/4 mile long and are longer. They take a lot of water, and the electric bills for this summer, our bill will be huge. And we've been talking a lot about input costs. What does it cost to even get the crop ready or to even get the land ready to seed? There's a lot of costs, ladies and gentlemen. And eventually, when those input costs outweigh what they're going to actually get for the crops that they harvest, if they can harvest because of drought and because of disease or whatever it may be, they're not going to farm. Eventually, they're not going to be able to afford to farm. Why? Because, ladies and gentlemen, nowadays, everything is on credit. And even for farmers, it's on credit. She goes on to say, my husband says it might be about $250,000, their electricity bill for this summer, or higher. $250,000 electricity bill, ladies and gentlemen. She says that seeds is at an all-time high. And of course, we all know that fuel is out the roof. No one wants to work, so they can't find work. They can't find workers. And if they do, more than likely they have to pay more than what they are used to paying. She says that my neighbors are using cattle poop from feedlots to get their land ready. I'm pretty sure that that has to do with the cost of fertilizer. We ordered fertilizer and it came yesterday by the semi-load, which was a huge expense. She says that they ordered a semi-load of cattle feed and it's coming from about 200 miles away. And she says since the cattle can't eat dirt, they have to order the feed, which last year was $8,000 and this year is going to be over $10,000. So that's more than a 25% increase over last year's prices. Now, let me ask you a question, ladies and gentlemen. Do you think that farmers are going to absorb that cost and any other costs that they incur in being able to put food on our tables? No, they're going to have to pass that cost on to the consumer. They don't have a choice, and we don't have a choice, because if we don't pay that extra cost, guess what? They won't be able to farm. And how are we going to get food then? And listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. She says that if it doesn't rain soon, that they're going to have to ship cattle for sale. Pretty much ship them for processing. And what's that going to do? That, if it's done en masse, like by a lot of ranchers, farmers, that will actually bring the price of, beef down a little bit for a short time. But in the long run, it's going to end up bringing the prices of beef a lot higher than what they are now. And it doesn't take 6 months or even 1 year for them to go ahead and replace one cow, right? Because they have to receive it as a small cow, and then it has to grow, and then it has to be able to, be fertilized, right? So that it can have cattle and all that stuff, just so that they can make back their investment. So this is a big deal. We will see so many farms go under this year because they have to borrow all the money to run their farms. Like I said, everything works on credit. She says, I can tell you that the farmers here are telling their wives that they will have to garden and they will be putting up food. It's the talk of this side of Texas. It's the time of the year that farmers drop kick the farm in gear. Everything that can run is running. The motors are pumping water about 24/7 now, so all day long, all week long. I've been told I will not be planting flowers this year because it's going to be food. So instead of planting a flower garden, which is something that's done for leisure really, because it's pretty and stuff like that, that instead they are going to be planting food. These are farmers, ladies and gentlemen. So farmers themselves are seeing that instead of planting a flower garden, they are going to be planting food. If a farmer is saying that, do you think that maybe you ought to be doing something similar? Now, maybe where you are, you can't plant a garden. Maybe where you are, you don't have the property or you don't have the ability to plant a garden, but you can always stock up. You can always prepare for this food shortage that we are going to be seeing. This is coming from a farmer, okay, not from me. She goes on to say, Rudy, tell them that they better get things put up and plant all that they can. We that farm thousands of acres are in a mess with costs. Where do we cut back? How do we save money and where? The bills are eating us up and the crops are not even planted because it takes a ton of money to farm. Get what you can put up, even if it's 5 cans a week. That was her last message. Get what you can put up, even if it's only 5 cans a week. Slow and steady wins the race. Now, I want to go over with you really quick the carryover that we are expected to have this year in 2022. And for those of you that don't know what a carryover is, it's the grains that we have left over after we've used all the grains that we need for that year. All right, that's our carryover. So for example, let's say that you in your home, you grow 100 pounds of potatoes a year, but you only eat 70 pounds of potatoes a year. Well, your carryover into the next year to get you through until the next harvest is 30 pounds of potatoes. All right, just making it real simple so you understand what a carryover is. But in this case, we're going to talk about the carryover for the United States. This, ladies and gentlemen, is an excerpt that I took out from the USDA website, right? And what this is it is their estimate of what our carryover for grains is going to be this coming year, 2022. It says here the U.S. Department of Agriculture, in its December 9th of 2021 World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimate report forecasts the U.S. carryover of wheat on June 1st, 2022, so this year. Now, they're reporting that by June of 2022, that we will have a carryover that is equivalent to about 598 million bushels. So let's say 600 million bushels. What does that mean? That is the amount of wheat that we will have as a nation, all right, the United States, to carry us over until our next harvest. All right, so let's just go ahead and put this into perspective. Let me bring my calculator out. So if you take a look at 598 million bushels, let's just call it 600 million. That's 600 million bushels. If you multiply that times 60 pounds, I believe it's 60 pounds per bushel, that equals a lot. That equals 36 billion pounds. But is it really a lot, ladies and gentlemen? Let's go ahead and divide 36 billion pounds of wheat by the number of people here in the United States, which is around 330 million, right? It may be a little bit more, but let's say around 330 million. So we'll divide this by 330. Ladies and gentlemen, that's 109 pounds of wheat per person. 109 pounds. It's not as much now, is it, as what it seems when you look at millions and billions of pounds. 109 pounds of wheat. That is our carryover per capita here in the United States come June 22nd. But the question is, what happens if we have a disastrous harvest? What happens if this mega drought affects our harvest of wheat and we have an even lesser carryover going on into next year? Well, I want to show you something else that should alarm you, because it's great that we have a 600 million bushel carryover going into next year. But how much do we use? How much do we actually use here in the United States? We're going to go ahead and bring it down over here. Well, first of all, let me go ahead and show you that our carryover went down by almost 250,000 bushels from last year. Where last year we had a carryover of 845 million bushels, this year we're only looking at 600 million bushels. All right, but let's bring it down here where it says the forecast for domestic use was unchanged from November across all sectors. So this last November is when they forecasted it, and that forecast has remained unchanged as far as our domestic use, what we use here in the United States. So remember that we have a carryover of 600 million, and our domestic use is 1.16 billion. So let's just say 1.2 billion. 600 million goes into 1.2 billion twice. That means that our carryover is only half of what we use domestically. You understand that? Meaning that if we have a very bad harvest and we don't harvest half of what we normally harvest, that we won't have enough to get us through a year. We will in a way, but I doubt that the government will intervene to do this. I would be surprised if they do. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and cover that with you here in a second. Food use held steady at 962 million bushels. And they're describing what we're using that 1.2 billion bushels at. So 962 million bushels is used for food. Mainly manufacturers, producers, things like that, all right? Now, seed use, 66 million bushels. So we use 66 million bushels so that we can replant the next year. Now, feed and residual use remained at 135 million bushels, which is a little bit up from last year. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we need to look at right here. We produce enough food for our nation, but look at this. The USDA projected that wheat exports would be around 840 million bushels. So let's say that we have a harvest that is a terrible harvest and we only get half or 3/4 of what we normally get. Are we still going to export 840 million bushels? That is going to be the key, ladies and gentlemen, as to whether people go hungry or not. Either way, the price of food is going to go up dramatically. But the key as to whether people go hungry because there is scarcity, in my opinion, will depend on whether we continue to export like we have been in the past. There's plenty of countries, and you can look this up, that have stopped their exports. And I'm not talking about Russia or Ukraine. I'm talking about other countries like Brazil, like Argentina. I believe, well, Venezuela can't really export anything right now anyways because they can't do anything down there because of their economic crisis. But there are a lot of countries, mainly in South America, that have actually stopped their exports because they want to take care of their people first. So get ready for food prices to continue to rise, and there's a good probability that with everything that's going on geopolitically, internally, with the weather, all that kind of stuff, with our financial system, everything that's going on is going to make the prices of not only everything that you use, but mainly food stuff, continue to accelerate at a rate, ladies and gentlemen, that we have never experienced before. So get ready. Get ready for your grocery bills to go up that 1,000%. Like the video that I published yesterday. Get ready for that. Because I see that happening. But guess what? Here's the good news, and I'll end it at that. You have time to prepare. We are going to wake up like Germany did this last week, from one day to another, seeing food prices up from one day to another, 20 to 50%, just like they did. And it's not going to stop there. Heed the warning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you got something out of this, and I hope that I explained it in a way that most could actually understand. All right? Having said that, remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. I'm Alaska Prepper. I am out. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand that not everyone is in the part of their preparedness plan where they should be storing long-term freeze-dried food. But if you are, take a look at Nutrient Survival. I stand behind this food because it is the most nutrient-dense food in the market. It tastes great, they have outstanding customer service, and the company is run by great people that I call my friends. You're not going to find a more nutrient-dense food that tastes good and is reasonably priced when compared to other major brands. I wouldn't stand behind Nutrient Survival if I didn't personally use it and love it. So feed your freedom with Nutrient Survival.